If you are afraid to do something, get very specific about the fear. What are you afraid is going to happen? Like in detail, and then get specific about the actual likelihood of that fear. Because I had not been starting a company under the idea that I would, like it wouldn't work. And I was a
Yeah.
single mom at the time, two baby daughters, no financial safety net from my family, obviously. So if it didn't work, we were going to be homeless and hungry.
So what part of the country are you in again today?
Columbus, Ohio.
Fantastic. And that's you grew up in Ohio, right?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, just kind of walk me through briefly your story, your journey. I when we talked earlier, you had some extraordinary circumstances that I was just thinking about that you were able to overcome and yeah, I just if you don't mind, just kind of walk me through a little bit of your life journey real quick and let's
Sure.
just have a conversation.
Sure thing. Thanks. So yeah, I was born into a blue collar family. My dad was a day laborer on construction crews. Later was a truck driver. My mom stayed home with us, so money was a huge issue for my family. Always, never homeless, never hungry, but pretty close on both accounts. Very My dad's favorite joke, because we're Irish, my dad's favorite joke is, the wife and the kids have been eating potato soup all week, and it's Friday, it's payday, so I'm going to let them eat the potato. So, we just was always was tight always, and that informed a lot of my early decisions. So, for example, I love to act and tell stories and make jokes and be the center of attention, and I loved theater as a kid, but growing up on the wrong side of the poverty line there, I was the idea of pursuing a career in theater, which had pretty uncertain income potential, was not a practical choice to me. And so it was just like that felt like a dream. And, poor kids can't chase dreams is kind of the, message I got. It was like, keep your nose clean, work hard, get a good education, get a good job. Like that's what you do. And you do it in a field that you can, make your rent.
Yeah.
So I was good at math and science, and so universal advice for young people good at math and science is be an engineer. Okay, I'll do that. And I remember researching the course catalog, looking at which and then kind of mapping that onto salary data and seeing which kind of engineers made the most money, because I was just abjectly terrified of poverty. So I was like, oh, chemical engineers make the most. Okay, I guess I'll major in chemical engineering. And I did, and went to school on a scholarship and worked, my tail off, because I'm from a very rural place. So we didn't have chemistry, we didn't have calculus, we didn't have physics in my high school. And there I was going to, private engineering school, one of the top 25 engineering schools in the country, with kids that came in with, sophomore level credits, talking about AP. I'd never heard of AP. I was just so behind. I was so behind, but I worked really hard and made it through engineering school, got a job right out of school, as an engineer at GE. I did some internships along the way, of course, but then was at GE when it was the darling of the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, because it was the Jack Welch heyday. And so, that was as far as I had ever dreamed. Like, go get a degree, get a good job, get a good salary, you've made it. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I had never contemplated anything past the age of about 23. So, and my parents thought,
Wow.
well, this is good, right? Because my parents' generation, a lot of folks would get a job. If you could get a good job at a place that offered a solid pension, you worked there for 35 years, that was what a good career looked like. And obviously for our generation, that isn't the way it is. So I was sort of discovering that. Um, and, as my career at GE and then subsequent Fortune 100 companies, large bureaucratic, top down, old school organizations in many ways, and got increasingly sort of disenchanted with corporate America and some of the decision making, living and dying by the quarter point, and all kinds of stuff. And I was frustrated and tired of it. And I remember, hearing from my older brother, had taken the entrepreneurial leap before I did, and he was kind of in my ear all the time, like, you should start your own company. You could do it. You could start your own company. But I was super risk averse, because again, avoiding poverty was my highest North Star. And I had a decent job and a company car, and I mean, there was good benefits. I don't mean to brag, but every single week a paycheck got deposited. It was like pretty dang good. And then I got to the point where I was ready to do something different. I was super frustrated, and I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, which, there's some stuff in that book I love. There's some stuff in that book I didn't love. But one of the things from that book that I thought was really, that spurred me into action is, if you are afraid to do something, get very specific about the fear. What are you afraid is going to happen? Like in detail, and then get specific about the actual likelihood of that fear. Because I had not been starting a company under the idea that I would, um, like I wouldn't work. And I was a
Yeah.
single mom at the time, two baby daughters, no financial safety net from my family, obviously. So if it didn't work, we were going to be homeless and hungry. And this like vague fear. But when I got specific, it's like I'm not going to be homeless or hungry, right? Like what's really going to happen if I launch a business and it fails is I'm going to go into a little bit of debt and I'm going to have to go get another job. And it might be a job I hate. But good news, I already have a job I hate. So if that's the worst that happens, it's not a good reason not to do it. So a little over 15 years ago, I launched the business.
That's
And there's been tons of up and down since then, which I'm happy to talk to too. But that's kind of how I got to this point.
wow. That is fantastic. I love that on so many fronts. And there's a couple of things, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back and unpack a little bit about your childhood
Sure.
and then in getting into college, because I think that's a huge point that often gets missed, and that creates a launch pad for people
Hmm.
a lot of times, because you went from rural America where, to your point, you didn't have a lot of options in terms of academic credits um, and you didn't come into college with this understanding of what college was going to be and those sorts of things, but you knew, hey, engineering, I'm good at science and math. So that puts you at the front end of the STEM curve for women, right? Which
Hmm.
was,
Yep,
so
absolutely.
you're breaking through a lot of you're plowing ground, you're pioneering. And that's incredible. That I think that's a theme I'm hearing from you. How how did you pick Case Western? And then what was that transition like? Because I actually, as you were
Mhm.
talking just about that first, let's say third or so of more than a third, but that first chunk of your life, maybe from when you were 15 until, you started your firm,
Mhm.
there's a, you took a lot of risks. You took a big risk going to college, even though it was like, in theory, it was the right choice. It
Yeah.
was very abnormal for your background.
For sure. I mean, I'm first generation college, and also, it was just if you look at where I'm from, it's just a bunch of farmers and people working like in auto body shops or the convenience store or whatever. So there's not a lot of industry there, no
Right.
industry virtually other than real small stuff. And so I was one of 58 kids in my high school graduating class, so tiny class. Three people went to college from my class. How did I pick Case? They gave me money. I applied everywhere I applied. It was, my older brother had gone to college at Ohio State, and I really wanted to go there because I'd gone to visit him, and it was a lot of fun. But Ohio State didn't give me any money,
Okay.
and the grants weren't enough, and so Case kind of loaded me up. They whatever they saw they liked, and they gave me a lot of money, and that was the driver for me. And yeah, it was such a culture shock for lots of reasons. I mean, Case campus is in the near east side of Cleveland, very, very urban, not a particularly great part of town on the edges of campus. So,
Right.
there had been like a drive-by shooting a few streets away from campus. Like my second week on campus, my dad was ready to come up and kidnap me back home. He was not a fan of me living in the city. And so, and I mean, it's beyond that. Like I didn't go to school with any people of color, zero people of color in my high school, right? So
Right.
there was this a very homogeneous, like white, poor, uneducated. Like it's just a very certain kind of narrow slice of America is where I had spent my entire life. And now I'm going to school with people of every stripe and flavor and every background and a lot of rich kids. I'd never been around rich people. I candidly had a bit of a prejudice against people with money, like a certain set of beliefs about that, which I think is interesting because now, and I don't want to jump forward into what I do now, but a lot of our work with pricing and sales teams is talking about people's origin stories around money because that influences how they sell and how they show up in money conversations with customers.
Yeah.
So It's just I didn't have any awareness at the time how much like I can have this conversation with you now 30 years plus later
Yeah.
and have some empathy for 18-year-old Casey who was just jumped in the deep end, but it was a lot. And I remember the very first day, my very first class was calculus, Calc 101. And the teacher said, "Who in here has had calc before?" And everybody but me and this one other kid raised their hands. And she goes, "Great, we'll teach it like a review." And she did. She wrote on the board with one hand and erased with the other hand. So if you weren't fast enough to write in the 4 or 5 seconds it was on the board, it was gone. I it baffles me now because I don't have the energy I had at 18, that I had the energy to work as hard as I did because I had to keep my scholarship. I had to have a 3.5 or above. So I'm going to review session. I mean, it was just stubbornness, frankly, absolute stubbornness that got me through it.
Yeah, and what's the book Grit that's out there? Have you
Uh,
read that?
I
Are you
haven't,
familiar?
but
Are you
I it
familiar
sounds
with
like I
it?
should. Yeah, yeah, I am.
Yeah, so it's the whole concept that when they looked across industries and looked across cultures and looked across different businesses and all sorts and demographics and everything, there was one when they looked at people that had quote unquote experienced success from a worldly perspective, and even from other perspectives, the one common denominator was grit, which could be called stubbornness, right? It's just, I'm not going to
Yeah.
quit. I won't
Yeah.
quit, right?
Yeah. I
And
think it helped me. I grew up with four brothers and I was the only girl, and I had heard my whole life, you can't do that, you're a girl, which is like if you want me to engage in it's like a dare, right? Like
okay,
I'm incapable of not responding to you can't do that. You can't do that. Like it's just like, well, watch me. I've been like that since I was a toddler, I suppose, because these boys around me were and they knew how to push they didn't think I couldn't do it. They just loved to push my buttons and it worked every time. So I suppose that, this sort of proving mentality is behind a lot of it. And
yeah.
ultimately, that can become a bit unhealthy if you're just accomplishing for accomplishment's sake because you're trying to prove something about worth when the worth isn't dependent on those things. But, that's a wisdom of age 50 talk. And I didn't know that at 18.
No, no, no. That's exactly it, right? And I don't know. I have this core belief that we can see roughly half our life in front of us at any
Mhm.
point in time, right? The normal person's horizon is half their life in front
Oh,
of them.
that's cool. That's a cool framing.
And I don't have data to prove that, but it's just from conversations and things. And
Yeah.
like, if you think through different age groups, it's like, okay. So an 18-year-old, to your point, can see themselves to their mid 20s, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
that's about right.
and then, somebody 30 can see themselves to their mid 40s. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, but
yeah.
50? No. When I was 30, I didn't see myself at
No,
50.
50 sounded so old. Now I'm like, no, man, 50 is the new 49. That's my dad's joke.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you broke through all of these barriers. You candidly you broke out of rural America, in this homogenous, impoverished area, went to college, overcame a variety. I mean, I'm just thinking about all the stress levels that hit somebody because you're going through culture shock at the end of the
Mhm.
day. It's
Oh,
true
for sure.
culture shock. And you're still making it happen. You ended up, I think, with 2 or 3 degrees out of case.
Three. Yeah. I couldn't
Yeah.
stop going to school. My joke is I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah, I have a bachelor's of science in chemical engineering, a bachelor of arts in Spanish, and then I have an MBA with specialization in organizational behavior and international management.
Okay. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And
It sounds like I didn't know what I wanted to do.
yeah, yeah, but I don't know. When I was looking at your resume, it was also showing though that when you got earned your first degree, it looked like you went to work at GE. So were
That's
you
right.
full time while you were pursuing your other 2 degrees?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I had only a couple credits to close out the other bachelor's. Typically, you only graduate with a bachelor's once, but because one was a BS, I could pursue the BA by closing out those other courses that I needed to finish up the Spanish degree. So I did that and then rolled right into the MBA. And
Okay.
speaking a little culture shock too, like GE, this was still, they were still business formal. Like I didn't own a suit. I didn't, and then I did, and I owned one, and it was this cheap polyester. Like I had somebody have to take me aside. I'd been at GE for a couple of months. This older, not she was not older. She was older than me. A kind of a mid-career woman, kind of take me aside and very sweetly and kindly tell me basically like I needed to up my game with my wardrobe, and I was so embarrassed. Like I felt so ashamed of it that but I didn't know how to buy. I mean, just
Yeah.
I haven't thought of this in a million years, Mike, but this conversation's bringing up all kinds of old like feelings. I'm remembering just going to dinners, not knowing which fork to use, all that classic poor kid stuff, right? Like I just
Yes.
and I learned the chameleon skill a little bit and fake it till you make it. But
Yeah.
of course, imposter syndrome is a massive issue for me, or has been in the past. I think I've tamed a lot of those demons by now, but has been.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I think about a couple of mentors that I had along the way, and one, to your point, had a similar story to you, not quite as harsh of a beginning, but still made that they were brought into a corporate environment, blue chip corporate environment, and then they got fast tracked. And when they got fast tracked, part of that was they had to go do an 18-month rotation up at corporate with the C-suite, 9 months with the CFO, and then 9 months with the
Wow.
CEO, where they would do these. Well, they had a requirement at the time, which was you had to wear a suit, right? Cot tie,
Mhm.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, he said, I didn't own suits. I didn't own any suits. And he said, so when they made this offer to me and they said, hey, this is what's required, he said, I went back to him, I was like, guys, I've got a problem. And he said, I need your help. I don't own any suits. And you're telling me I've got to have, and they were very specific because they recognized they were pulling people out of these situations.
Yeah.
And they said, this is what you have to wear. And he was like, I don't own any suits. And you're telling me I've got to go buy 5 suits. And he's like, I don't have the budget for it. I don't have this. And so they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We'll give you, I don't remember if it was a spot bonus to go
Hmm.
and an allowance to
Somehow,
do that.
somehow, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then another person was in a different industrial environment, but similar to these types of companies, and brought into a leadership training. And one of the things they did when you were talking about eating, they took these young professionals and they took them through etiquette courses over the period of their first year as part of their
That would be
leadership development, right? Because
especially in the 90s and early 2000s. I
yeah,
don't know if I mean, I don't think bad manners ever go out of style, but I think the judgment that people had about certain ways of behaving at that
yes,
time was still a bit old school. Business was still done a certain way. People were, you had to be buttoned up a certain way. So man, that would have been what an advantage that they
oh
recognized
yeah,
that young people needed that.
yeah, and it was wild. And so, I was fortunate and blessed in that my parents had experienced those things as they were growing up, and so they were able to teach me that at a
Teach it.
young age. But again, still, if I'd gone into that job like what he was talking about, where you had to have X number of suits, I would have done the same thing. I was like,
Sure.
hey,
Even a cheap suit. I mean, it's
yeah,
like for a young person buying five of those suckers out of at once. Yeah, that's a lot.
yeah,
A
yeah.
lot.
So that's amazing. All right, so let's fast forward real quick. Two things.
Sure.
One, I'm gonna we're gonna mix it up. We're gonna go like if you think back over the past, what is it, it's 15-ish years that
A
you've
little over
had
15. Yeah.
you've been on your own.
Hmm.
Um, you've had some amazing wins and some incredible things. And you think about like impact that some of the projects you've had, what, how would you define like a couple of big wins? And you can define them
Sure.
any way you want, right? So if
Sure.
it's, whatever, what are a couple of wins that you've had?
Sure. Well, I think to create context for this, I would like to just sort of stay like like very briefly my why with my work, because I think
Yeah.
then it makes the wins clear why I care about those things. But the
Yeah.
why behind the work is that I'm deeply convinced that and committed that if you deliver excellence to your customers through your products and services, you got to be paid like you're excellent, not like you're good, certainly not like you're mediocre. And if you're accepting less than you are worth, it's unjust and it robs you of resources. And if those resources are in your pocket instead of, somebody else's bank account, what good can be done in the world. How could you, bless your family, your community, your church family, your kids' school, whatever, right? So these are like there are real human impacts when we earn more money, because now we're talking about families and communities impacted whenever we talk about paychecks. So that's the why, because I stare out in, whether I'm in a keynote or, stare out into the audience of men and women who pour their hearts out every day for quality and service and excellence, and seeing that go under rewarded, and it fires me up. So if you consider that's the backdrop for it. The wins, I mean, for sure, when clients hire us to work with their sales teams to help them sell from confidence and price with courage, and win more deals at higher prices, it shows up big time in the numbers, right? We have plenty of clients that have told stories of, you know, we have made $2 million more this past year, and we made 6 million, and those numbers are exciting, and they are happy about that, and I'm happy about that. But what I love is when they say, and that allowed us to pay out a profit sharing plan for the first time ever. So now I think
Yeah.
about, like, somebody's putting an extra house payment on their house, or making their daughter's college tuition payment, or getting hockey skates for their kids. And I just get like, I mean, it's happening to me right now. Like right now, my eyes are starting to water thinking about it. I get so fired up about how much good can be done with this work.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
means a lot. And then also there's a cultural shift that a lot of times happens, because if you consider, like, the space I'm in is pricing, where I tell you this is going to cost X, in the world, when that happens, 9 times out of 10 somebody says, is that the best you can do? I only have, Y. Here's another quote. In the B2B it's so much negotiation. So we get nothing but beat up about our prices. Even if they thought it was going to be 2x, they'll often say, is that the best you can do? Because why not? Can't hurt to ask, right? Negotiation strategy dictates that people will beat us up. That's the way it works. But we are human beings. And so when we hear that over and over and over and over, it can start to really chip away at our confidence.
Right.
Right. And humans, we're wired with something called the negativity bias, which is where we recall negative events with greater frequency and intensity than positive events. So you can hear 20 compliments, on the schoolyard. One bully says one mean thing, your confidence is wrecked, right? We're like that as adults too. So we get all this negative feedback about pricing, and it really affects the confidence. And so through our programs, when we have a big win with a client, and we've really shifted the skill set and mindset of the team such that they're winning those deals, this other thing happens, which is people start kind of squaring their shoulders a little bit, and they feel a lot of pride, and they feel like there's a deserving to
Yes.
be paid for this excellence. Not arrogance, but not terror either. Like somewhere in the middle is a quiet confidence that this is fair and just to be paid for this, product or service I pour my heart into. And especially the businesses where those folks have a real hand to play in the product or service itself, they just get so much pride. So I'd say the biggest wins client wise. I mean, sure, the numbers are big, but also, like, what is done with the numbers, and
Yeah.
then what happens to the culture with the people, because I want them to enjoy going to work every day and not feel like it's miserable. So that's one big one I would kind of say.
I love that. And it's your passion is contagious. As you were talking about that, I was sharing that passion. I was starting to tear up because, to your point, I was thinking about, I've got a client that I was meeting with recently, and they were doing multi-generational planning, because they were thinking about, hey, how do we pass this business on? And the thing of it was, they weren't thinking about their family. They were thinking about their employees' families. And it was just one of those things where, and again, I'll tear up thinking about it. It's like they they wanted their employees and their employees' kids to have a place to work where they could earn a healthy wage and live a good life, right? And
It's
be
awesome.
proud of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, that's worth fighting for. That,
Yeah.
when you talk about squaring your shoulders and having that confidence bias, that's worth having that, right? It's I was thinking about what you were talking about earlier, and when you were story, and there's a saying that we have about being humble and hungry, right? And I know people use that a lot, but that's what I heard in your story, is you haven't lost your humility. and you haven't lost your hunger, but your why matters.
Why is everything? Otherwise,
Yeah,
I think about like you just hooking it back to what we were talking about before with that proving. It's like
yeah,
I spent all my early days and a lot of my middle days just proving and chasing and trying to accomplish more. And it was like, okay, like the best way to get a scholarship at Case is be valedictorian. Okay, I guess I'll be valedictorian. Then I was valedictorian. And then I graduated summa cum laude. And then I this, and then I that. And it was like all these accomplishments were piling up, but it wasn't ever very satisfying to me because I was
yeah,
just like there was this hole of I was trying to fill through
yeah,
accomplishment because I was lacking some purpose. I didn't know what I was here for. I didn't know what I was doing. I was good at some stuff and I worked hard. But I think since founding this company and really locking in on that reason for working and that reason for doing, getting up and sitting at this desk every day is it's taken all that it's brought taken all that heat out of that proving. Like there's no
yeah,
need to prove. All I'm here to do is help. I want to
yeah,
help people. And by the way, when I do a really good job of that, enough money gets in our bank account. So I'm able to do all kinds of fun things I love to do with my family and my kids and my philanthropy. But if it's like you got to get the cart, after the horse, not the other way around. If you
yeah,
start with like real clarity of purpose and you're working for that, I think then all the other rewards come. If you're working for rewards, it can at the very least be hollow and at the worst be, downright, harmful.
yeah, yeah. No, that's exactly it. Well, this is maybe a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a red herring or a rabbit trail or whatever. I was having a conversation with a uh, young career person recently, and they were talking about um, that imposter syndrome, and they're like,
Hmm.
and then also how missing the mark or failure or underperforming could totally destroy their day, their week, and their month. And they were saying, like, hey, this actually just completely depletes them.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me because I remember for the longest time in my career, and candidly, it was well over a decade, maybe 2 decades into my career, that it would do. If I had a bad day or bad meeting, it could just wreck everything. And there's a saying, there's a theologian named Henry Nouwen that says, gratitude and resentment cannot coexist. And and they were asking me, they're like, well, what'd you do? And I was like, well, I learned to say thank you. And it was like when something goes wrong, instead of me getting angry and resenting that, I started
Hmm.
saying, thank you. What can I learn from this? And how
Hmm.
can I get better? And with that approach, everything changed.
I love that framing. I love that. I sort of tackled imposter syndrome from a different angle, although I probably could have saved myself a lot of headache if I'd have just tried to tune myself to gratitude. But
Yeah.
for me, I think I was I had, some close work friends that kind of started to call me out on what they saw, which is that I was sort of behaving as I thought a young corporate professional behaved. I was
Mm.
talking and dressing and acting and showing up to meetings, and I was very like, buttoned up, and I was hard charging, and I'm gonna, and I had this one friend, he didn't, when before we knew each other very well, he had this one opinion of me. And then we had gone on this work trip. A whole bunch of us went, and he and I and a bunch of folks, spent a lot of time together outside of the event, just hanging out and getting to know each other. And he said, you're a lot more fun than I ever knew at work. And I was like, I'm going to try to take that, not like, I'm trying not to be offended by it. He's like, no, I'm serious. You have so much personality, and I don't get any of this at work. At work, you're just so like, bup, 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 business, ABC, ABC. And what I told him was like, no, I work hard, I play hard. When I'm at work, I'm at work, and when I'm out, I'm able to. And he started to chip away at that belief over time by planting a seed that me letting the real me out at work was actually an unlock. It was actually like a hack, like giving people access to the real me was going to be me at my best, and that it was going to work better at work. And that's exactly what happened. Now it took me a couple years to stop, you know, and every once in a while I still revert to, like, I'll hear somebody throw out some complicated, M&A term that I hadn't heard before, and I'll be like, yeah, I totally know what that term means. Yeah, I for sure do. Yeah.
And
But but mostly like, and this podcast is a perfect example. Like, yeah, I was poor and I didn't know anything, and I grew up, my dad was an alcoholic. It's just the more on my real me, not trauma dumping, but just being authentic in every
Yeah.
moment, including at work. It is like a flame for the moss of people around you, right? Like they just want that. Everyone wants that. We're so attracted to authenticity, and we're so turned off by performative BS. And I didn't realize I was being performative, but I think that's exactly what was happening. And I was, pretty effective. But when I started to like unlock the real me with the people I worked with, my effectiveness kind of went, stratospheric. I was so much better. And by
Yeah.
the way, so much less energy wasted on trying to pretend something.
Yes, yes, yes. I'll just sit back here and just say yes. I love that. Absolutely love that. Okay, hard pivot to the
Yeah.
conversation. I'm always curious about, what people do that's interesting, that they're working on that's new, that's interesting, or in private life in terms of like adventures and things like that. So, or vacations and stuff. You strike me as being somebody that kind of pushes boundaries in different ways. So,
You you got it. Yeah, I'm a whitewater kayaker, so I like hucking myself over waterfalls and stuff in a kayak. So I like and mountain biking and snowboarding and other kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a bit of an adventure. Not although I'm perfectly content to lay on a beach and read a book too. I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm not too difficult to please there. I think how do I answer this? What do I? We're really leaning in and I mean maybe this is a so what answer because it's what everybody's doing, but I'm very interested in what's happening with AI. I'm
Yeah.
alarmed in some ways for sure. I have some real concerns about the role it's going to play in our society's future, but as a tool, as a sheer raw power, it's unbelievable what it's capable of. And so I've been a pretty heavy user, I would say a fast adopter for several years, but we're really exploring how to use that to do the work that we do in a even more tailored way, and it's sort of a tech-enabled personalization and things like that. That's kind of interesting to me because good training has to be specific enough to be relevant, but general enough to be repeatable. And I think we've done a great job with that. We've figured out how to train folks in ways that is very specific to them while still being something we can turn around and deliver to another person or another company. But I think AI allows us to take that even further, and so I'm geeking out about that. Nothing commercialized yet, but we're working on it in the background.
From an AI standpoint, I'm with you. I think there's a tremendous amount of disruption that's going to be taking place. And I think some of it's healthy and I think some of it's very unhealthy.
Agree.
Um, and one of the biggest concerns that I do have from a generational standpoint is a twofold effect. And I saw a reel recently where somebody was testifying about the cognitive capabilities of generational cognitive capabilities started to decline for the first time in 2010, um, for the first time in the history, as far as people have been tracking that. And what they align that to is tech adoption in education and specifically screen learning. That screen learning is a limiting factor in people's ability to process and truly take in and process information versus the tactile learning of, holding a book or reading paper and things
Or
that.
listening to an instructor or anything. Yes, right.
Yes, right. If you think about I forget the name of the forgetting curve, but where they did
Yeah,
all the studies on the forgetting curve and
yeah,
the right way to learn and the different practices that you engage in. And from a screen and technology standpoint, it makes it so much more efficient to deploy that information and then to test people. But what they're realizing is folks are skimming and not truly taking in, they're not chewing on it,
mhm,
digesting it, and
yeah,
processing it and making it their own.
yeah,
They're skimming and regurgitating highlights.
right.
And
That
so
makes
therefore
sense.
their deep processing power, if you think about that computer processing, they're not developing that deep processing power. And then when they get challenged later in life to that with deep, hard, challenging issues, they don't have a muscle there
Yeah.
to
Yeah. I
use.
agree with that. I agree with that 100%. You said the two things, so I'll let you say your second one, but I have some things I wanted to
No, go
share
for it.
about this.
We'll come back to it. That's
Well,
great.
I think I see from a generational perspective, I see that the bottom rungs of the ladder, the professional ladder, are getting hacked off because you don't need somebody to enter a bunch of data in a spreadsheet anymore or do some of the stuff. Like I think about what I was doing at 22 taught me stuff that allowed me to do the stuff I did at 25, which allowed me to do the things. So it's like all that stuff is not done by humans anymore. And so I think not just about the job impact, although that's a thing, but just the learning and the ability to I don't like when people graduate from college, if they go to college, how there is a gap and that gap is widening. And I don't think we've answered that. And I think the idea that you could do more with less with AI is unquestioned. It's how does that reality fit map onto our society? And I got a daughter who's a high school junior who's thinking about engineering as a degree because she loves math and science. And I think it is what engineering looks like by the time she's graduated from college is different than what it looks like today.
Yeah.
And the hyperbolic version of that is there's no such thing as engineers anymore. AI does it all. I don't think it's all the way there, but I think we're kidding ourselves if we think it's not going to be very different. And so it's got super enormous implications for young people. And because it has implications for young people, it has implications for us all because we're a connected society.
Amen. Yeah. No, that's it. And that was actually where the second point was, is that
Okay.
I'm seeing a huge job gap that's going to happen because we're there was somebody I was talking to at a large law firm, and the rate that they're hiring young associates has dropped dramatically. But the problem is because AI can do that. But the
Yeah. But
problem with
where do
that
those
is,
people build skill? Where do
yes,
they build discernment? Where do they build
yeah,
judgment? Where do they build experience?
yeah, yeah. Well, I think about like one of my biggest career wins happened because I spent a stupid amount of time in a spreadsheet as a product manager
Uh-huh.
studying certain SKUs, and I started seeing patterns and alignment, and I was like, oh wait, if I match this with this, well, and it's something there's somebody could look at and say, yeah, well, AI could do that in 30 seconds. Yeah, but there was also another part of it that took place that allowed there was a human creativity element that AI's never, which was, oh, if I take this other thing that's totally disassociated with it from a fundamentally different product line
Yeah.
and map that in, then that's all of a sudden, then we've got Nirvana. And we created this totally transformational and revolutionary new product.
Awesome. That ability to have a muscle and keep a muscle that is deep cognitive processing power, that is critical thinking, that is highly evolved creativity. That's those muscles, if we're just, it's easy to get lazy with these tools. And then it's not just that what's possible is different with humans than AI. It's also what does relying on this technology do to the human and our development, our cognitive,
Yeah.
capabilities. I mean, the reasons for concern are plentiful. I feel like my ability to really do anything about that at my little, range of scope is pretty limited. So I am just trying to sound the alarm a little bit with folks. Like I had a meeting with this woman today that does LinkedIn marketing, and I said, what are you seeing from AI? How much is that affecting your business? And she kind of gave an answer that made me feel like she's not taking it seriously enough. Now, I might be over alarmist, but somebody, so we were talking about this earlier this week with a different friend, and he said, if you're worried, you probably don't have to. And if you're not worried, you probably should. So maybe I'm a little on the paranoid side, but I think if you're paid for what you know,
Oh,
not what you do with your hands or whatever, if you're paid for what you know, if that is the primary mechanism by which you earn money, how that happens is going to be really different and not in 50 years. I mean, in 5.
I am spending close to 30 to 40% of my time right now redefining our firm
For
because
that
of
reason.
AI. Because of
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
Completely. Because
Yep.
what we do today and the way we create value and command price is going to be totally different 3 years from now,
That's right.
whether I like it or not.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's where I'm like, you can argue with it if you want to, but like I'm just choosing to try to get prepared because I can't
Yeah.
stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's,
agree. And so that's where like, okay, well, what can I do? How can I leverage this? What can I learn from it? How can this make us better equipped to serve the market, not get left behind by it?
yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, what's the story of, I forget the name of it's one of these premier typewriter companies back in the day, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
truly a
Hmm.
typewriter company. They were the ones that invented the word processor.
Okay.
And one of their team members came up and said, "Hey, we need to do this." And they said, "No, we're an excellent typewriting company, and that's what we're going to do. We're not going to be a word processor." And you know what they are to this day? The world's best typewriting company. They still exist. They still produce
Wow, they
typewriters.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So it's a
okay.
nostalgia buy
Yeah,
because some people
exactly.
like the clink of the keys. Well, I mean, the
So,
stories, the blockbusters, the
yeah,
Kodak films, I mean,
yep,
there's a million stories like that. And my kids, my kids are Gen Z, and they're pretty concerned about the environmental impact of AI. They're also very they take exception with the hoovering up of everybody's IP and ingesting it to train these models. Both of these concerns are completely valid. I totally agree with them. And to boycott AI because of those things is so impractical to me. It's impossible to eat. I heard a speaker say not long ago, AI isn't coming for your jobs, but the people who use it are. And I actually think it is coming for some jobs, but for sure the people who use it are. And so I have a stake that my kids, I love their moral high ground, but I also want them to be able to feed themselves. So there's maybe that's the truck driver's daughter in me that's still like, you have to have a practical way to make money. You have to look. So that's my junior in high school. Her backup plan is to become an electrician. I'm like, I don't hate this plan.
yeah.
I don't hate it.
Oh, my
So,
youngest son, he's going to be graduating this spring. He wants to do firefighting. And I'm like, he's graduating from college with a
you
great
want to
degree from
talk
a
about
great
an
school.
AI proof field. Good for him. I mean,
Yeah.
scary for a parent probably, but good for him.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, okay, to your point, that is an AI proof career. And then,
100%.
yeah, I mean,
Maybe more than just about any other. I can't think
yes.
of because I think of other ones that are not necessarily going to be affected by AI, but they could be affected by automation,
Yeah.
robots. Like there's plenty of like first it's they're coming for the people who get paid for what they know, and then it'll be what they do with their hands and their backs and their arms and their legs. But
Yeah.
the firefighting, that feels like he's going to be good for a long time with
I,
a job.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so we'll see how it all works
Yeah,
out. But
yeah,
yeah, but I do think that, and it's also the whole micro thing around blue collar jobs. The irony of it is, in the
yeah.
'80s when we were coming along, they were the '80s and '90s. They were saying, "Hey, go get these white collar jobs, learn coding, all of that stuff," and then just flipped it right on its head. It was a judo move, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, and then you look at the cost of higher education and how the crushing debt that kids are going into to get a degree, only to find that they're not able to get a job in their field or not able to earn enough to really, I mean, the economics of college and the story. Where I was, when I was coming up, there was sort of a like the trades were sort of a second class to someone who had a
Yes.
college degree. Like that was the sort of the story. Never really true, but
Yeah.
it was kind of this, there was a little bit of a stigma about going into some of those fields, and I think that's gone. Those are people that have jobs when I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's wild. It's absolutely
Yeah,
wild. Well, hey, real quick, let's go on the kayaking thing, and then we'll
yeah,
wrap it
sure,
up if that's okay.
sounds great.
So yeah,
And on a
so
high note.
yeah, let's do it. So kayaking, where do you go? What do you do? Like what class? What do you like to do?
Yeah. So I will not surprise you to know when I was younger and hard charger, I was running class 5 and all, which
Okay.
is, for anybody
Yes.
who's listening who doesn't know, that's pretty. It's a one of the higher levels of kayaking. Class 6 is the only one above it, but that's considered unrunnable. As soon as it's runnable, it's rated a class 5. So, and I used to do, all kinds of stuff all over the world. I've kayaked in Europe and South and Central America and all over the United States, including the Grand Canyon, which is really, really amazing. Kayaking through the Grand Canyon. It's an 18-day trip. You camp out every night, pack up everything in your boat, and keep going. It's a really rad experience. Idaho, so did a lot of multi-day trips out in Idaho as well. But now it's, I mean, I might do a trip like that. I've been to Costa Rica a number of times. I might do something like that here and there. Most of my kayaking's a little closer to home. There's a river very near. We have a little place in Maryland, in the mountains of Western Maryland, and it's the Yaquigani, and we do the Upper Yak, which is a class 4 plus river. It's 2 minutes from our place, and it's a real easy shuttle. So that's our favorite. That's our home run. We do that one a lot, and then just wherever. I mean, I'm up for anything as long as my risk tolerance around kayaking is lower than it once was. I used to be up for anything, and now I'm like, for two reasons. One, I've got a lot of people dependent on me, and if I get, hurt or something, it's not great. And also, I'm going to be 50 in a couple months, so I don't heal as well as I once did. So, getting hurt is, I remember I did this river in France in my early 20s, and I flipped over and hit a rock with my face, and I broke my nose and rolled up, and blood was like just pouring out of me, and they're like, well, we got to get you off this river. I'm like, no, it's fine, the water's really cold, it'll stop bleeding in a minute, let's keep going. And I finished the river, which is like, what kind of an idiot was I? But I was just like, I didn't come all the way to France to sit in an ER, man. I'm going to be on this river. So now I'm like, I think if that's going to make me sore, I might not go, So I still like to do it. I just don't go as hard.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So if you had all right, let's say if you had a week, you could go anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country, you pick, right? Where would you go? What would you do
for kayaking or general?
Yeah, kayaking
Ecuador.
first. What?
Ecuador.
Ecuador?
Yeah, I've only been there I've been there a couple times, but only once for kayaking, and it was phenomenal. Super remote, not real commercialized, beautiful, phenomenal whitewater. Loved it.
Okay.
Loved it. I'd love to go back to Ecuador.
Okay. And then what if it wasn't kayaking? What would you do?
All right. This is a zany answer, but I have an obsession with escape rooms. I'm obsessed with escape rooms. Yeah. And I would go to a big city that has 40 different escape room places, and I would just binge escape rooms all week. I would do 8 a day.
Oh my word, you do have. Okay.
Yeah. I did my first one like 8 months ago, and I've already done like 40 rooms. I love them.
Oh my word. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do them by myself because I just need a fix. But I like doing them with my daughters are real good to do them with because they're a lot of fun. Not everybody's, by the way, anybody listening, and they're like, I always thought escape room sounded really stupid. I didn't really get it until I did it. And then I've done them with the right groups and the wrong groups. And the wrong groups, it's horrible. And the right groups, it's amazing. So if you didn't like it, maybe it was the people.
I love that. Give it a second try. That's fantastic.
Yeah, give it a second shot.
Well, Casey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time today, and you're truly inspiring. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story.
Well, I'm really gratified to have this conversation. Your questions are thoughtful, and it was so easy to connect with you in the conversation. So thanks for having me.